chosen is overcoming fear. Now, why choose this topic right now? I think it's because we're having so many natural disasters and man-made disasters. People tend to get anxious and a bit fearful. What is it that we're really afraid of? What kind of things make you afraid? What makes you afraid? Nothing? Nothing. Good. Anything?
I haven't thought about that.
Okay, that's good. I think as you get older, sometimes you think of more things to be afraid of. You get afraid about your jobs, about what's going to happen to your kids, how your life is going to go. Are we going to have another hurricane? Are we going to have another flood? What am I going to do? But what is it that we're really afraid of? Are we really afraid of these things? What if the snow comes down so hard that you can't go anywhere? Is that scary? It's fun. Yeah.
I don't know how many people have phobias.
Yeah, people have phobias, but why do they have phobias?
Because it's like when you feel something, if you don't want to, it's like you don't want to do it and just feel it's like if there's what can I say? My mom had a car. My mom used to had a car crash at India, and that's why he had a phobia. That's for fall, heights, That's a phobia.
But what is it? I think you said it right there. What is it that makes us have the phobia? Because we don't want something to happen. Yeah. Or we don't want to an unexpected thing to happen.
Yeah.
We want to be able to predict how our lives are going to be. We like to know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't like uncertainty. And why don't we like uncertainty? Because basically we feel that we don't have any control over anything. This thing of having control over things is nothing but our ego deciding that we know best. There's a story, I don't even remember where it was, about Shiva and Parvati sitting up at Vaikuntha playing dice. And they're enjoying themselves. They're having a good time. You've heard this story?
Yes.
And all of a sudden, what happens? Shiva jumps up and he leaves. And then he comes right back. And Parvati said, "Why did you come back? Why did you leave?" And he said, "Well, one of my devotees was walking down through a forest and something was coming to attack my devotee." "Well, why did you come back?" "Because my devotee picked up a brick." Now, why would that make Shiva come back? Because
He can protect himself.
he thinks he can protect himself. Yes, he thinks he's stronger than Shiva. So this happens to us too. We feel that we have control over everything.
It's I heard this story when this demon was trying to pray Shiva to be immortal. When Shiva appears, he gives the power to him, and somehow Shiva got scared, and he thought he was invincible, but the demon was chasing him, so he ran.
Didn't he turn around and face the demon?
No.
He never did.
No, he's trying to pray Brahma.
Anyway, I don't know that story that well. What was the moral of that story?
I didn't watch the full of it. I didn't watch all of it, but I recognize that part of it.
Okay. Anyway, I think that what our problem with overcoming our own fears is that we have certain expectations in life. We expect the same thing to happen each morning when we get up. We expect things to be the same. And this makes us feel comfortable. But uncertainty and things that go out of the ordinary, like the things that we have been experiencing lately. We went to the synagogue this morning and that was totally unexpected, totally out of the blue. How can they be not afraid? They are now increasing their security around their temple. I found that a little disconcerting because if we truly believe that the Lord takes care of us, and if we truly have faith that God is much greater than we are, then what are we afraid of? Are we afraid of other people? Are we afraid of ourselves? Do we doubt ourselves? What makes us fearful?
Something will happen.
Well, things happen in life. There's not all good things or all bad things. Some things, like all through the stories of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, there's wars, there's disasters, there's this, there's that. But the Lord is taking care of everything. If we decide to choose to take the way of emphasizing differences and emphasizing the things that when someone does something bad to us, do we choose to not see the God in them, or do we choose to say, okay, they have behaved terribly? Is that going to change me? Am I going to change my character in reaction to them? Or am I going to maintain my character and still be the person that I know I am? The all-loving person, the Atman. If I know I'm the Atman, what do I have to fear? Yes, bad things happen, and we have to accept them. We can do what we can to not have them happen again, but to change our basic nature into one of fearfulness and reaction to someone. They shouldn't have that power over us. Do we go to the lowest common denominator is our behavior? Or do we try and stay at the higher level that we know is true and work from there? Do we practice compassion, forgiveness? Do we put that into our external behavior? Do we become puppets in the hands of random acts? Because the one thing I think that causes basic fear is a fear of death. As soon as we have a faith in God and we know that we are not, that the Atman is eternal, what do we have to fear about death? Swami Tathagatananda, I don't know if you all, I'm sure you've all heard of him. He was in New York and he was a very bombastic Swami. He was very dramatic, he used to call us and write to us, pray for my blissful death. I think he did that for the last 10 years of his life. He did not fear going. In fact, he'd rather have gone, but he stayed. But I think that most people We say we believe we're out, and we say we believe this. We say we believe. When it comes right down to it, if we keep saying it often enough, we do put it in ourselves and we do believe it. But for the most part, I think everyone still wonders what is going to happen. And they don't want it to happen now. I remember we had a devotee, I'm ready to leave the world, I'm ready to leave the world. Oh, I'm ready to leave the world. And her brakes gave out on a hill, and it's a very steep hill. And she went right across the street, didn't get hurt. The car didn't even crash. And she came out of it and she said, I could have died. So sometimes we say things, but do we mean them in our hearts? Is it true that we do not fear death? I think that's where most of our fear comes from. Uncertainty, death. We don't need to fear that if we make the right choices in our life. I think the Katha Upanishad is overcoming death. When Nachiketa goes down to visit Yama, that's the only thing he wants to know, how to overcome death. And what does Yama tell him? We always have choices between the good and the pleasant. And the person who makes the choices for the good overcomes death because they find the reality of their Atma and they live in the reality of their Atma. But do we do that every day? It was Swami Vivekananda's favorite Upanishad, the Katha, and he read it most days. If we put that emphasis on overcoming our fears, overcoming our fear of other people, because we are one. We are the same as everyone else inside. Outside, there's many differences. The covers are different. The clothes are different. The behavior is often different. But every single person in this world, even the most seemingly evil, are seeking the same happiness that we are. They just are misdirected. And they have not made the right choices, obviously. But even in that, it's all part of God's play. Because the total balance in Maya is always in balance. Good and evil, good and evil, good and evil. They balance each other out. We see that when we have disasters. It's put right in front of our faces. Bad things happen, and it brings out the best in a lot of people. They become more helpful, more connected. They become concerned about their neighbors, their friends, their community. And they pull together. If they make that choice to identify with everyone. That's one of the choices we have each day. Do I know that that person who looks very different from me and behaves differently, but I know that all they want is to be happy, to be successful, and to find themselves. And that's, as far as I feel, that is our only purpose on this planet, is to uncover our own divinity and see who we are. And we get an opportunity every single second of every single day. Think of how many choices you make. Lots of things we do by rote. We have established a habit so we don't have to choose. We get up in the morning, I have a cup of coffee before I do anything else. I don't have to think about that. It's not a choice anymore, I just do it. But we all have these routines. When we start to question our routines, if we're not making progress in our lives, and we are pulling more and more into ourselves and less out. We become more and more selfish rather than more generous or more larger in our heart. Then we have to start looking at what choices we need to change. And that's where, what habits we have to change. And that's where it gets difficult. Because one of the things I know I have heard many times, many of us do this, the same thing over and over again. We have the same response to, say, someone who makes a comment. And each time we have exactly the same response. And it never works out well. Well, I've heard the definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I mean, really. The only thing we can change is ourselves. We can't change the other person. We can't change the situation many times. So who do we change to make ourselves less fearful, less selfish, more encompassing, and happier? The only thing we can do is work on ourselves.
It's almost impossible to make someone. It's almost impossible to change someone.
It is. I mean,
No, someone else.
yeah, no, I mean, it is almost impossible because they have to want to change. One of the philosophers, a Jewish philosopher, said, when the situation becomes overwhelming, the only choice we have is to change ourselves. Because none of us want to be unhappy, at least as far as I know. So, if you're in school and say that, I just heard a terrible story about when some of you were in school in India and the teacher was, and for no reason. Now how do you change that? You don't. So sometimes you can't change the situation, but you can leave the situation. You don't have to keep putting yourself there and go to a more congenial situation. If you can't because of your job, if that you're afraid of losing your job, then that binds you. If you're not afraid, what makes you afraid of losing your job? Lack of income. Lack of income. You can't take care of your family. But oftentimes, there is another job if you're willing to move. And you don't have to stay in the situation that's making you afraid of, fearful of the boss or fearful of the situation. If you have firm faith in the Lord, then usually you will be taken care of. It may not be in exactly the time you want, but you will be taken care of. We very seldom are we, even when terrible things happen. I mean, we had a huge fire in Santa Barbara. Huge. The biggest one. Now we're not the biggest fire, we're only the second biggest fire. Someone beat us. Like, whoa. Really want to get that title right.
Was it blue, yellow, or red? Was it blue? Like the blue fire is like it's the hottest one.
It was.
It's a fire.
It's a fire.
California fire.
Yeah, it's a California fire. It was
The wildfire?
280 acres, or 280,000 acres. And it went on for 4 months.
4 months?
Yep. But it got right near the temple in Santa Barbara. And we, of course, had to evacuate because you're in the way of the firemen. But the things that happened, the fire came down towards the temple. We had 4 men stay on the property. Came down, and they said just about the time they really thought they were going to have to leave, the wind changed, took it back up the hill. This happened like 4 times during the 2 nights that it was a terrible fire. So if we do what we need to do, make the right choices, we do brush clearing, we do all kinds of things, the Lord does protect us. Truly. I mean, we have had the experience 3 or 4 times. The next thing that happened was a huge debris flow that took out 400 houses and killed people. We decided not to evacuate. We were inconvenienced. The Lord took care of us in that situation too. We had no damage to the property, no damage to the temple. We were inconvenienced. That was all. We had no power for a few days. We had no gas for a few days. We had no water for 3 weeks. And we were isolated up there. But you hone your camping skills. And you find out that really nothing is... We had a good time. We didn't have to be afraid of anything, that anything was going to happen to us. And everyone who came, all of the utility people and people who were working came up and gave us drinking water. So we really were fine. Inconvenienced. Because we didn't have the internet. We couldn't watch television to see what was going on. And we had no idea what was going on in the community. And that was a blessing in one way and had us terribly isolated in another way. But it all works out in the end. We had devotees who lost their homes. We had devotees who were trapped in their buildings as the mud trapped them. They were in much worse shape than we were. I mean, I don't know. We had one devotee the mud all came under her condominium, and she couldn't do anything. Our cell phone started to work, so I called and I said, "How are you?" And she said, "I'm just sitting here." And I went, "Okay." She said, "I'm not really afraid, but I don't want to go outside because I'm afraid. I think if it comes again, my balcony may leave." So, I mean, everyone deals with these things in their own ways, but I don't know about reacting to these things with more fear. Like leaving, building barriers, isolating yourself. I don't believe in that. I do believe that we should still keep ourselves open. A bad thing may happen again. But the Lord does take care of us. Took care of all of them. In various ways. So, how can we, I don't know what other fears. As I say, I think it's making choices in your life, in our lives, every one of us. We have this ability. If anyone would like to comment, I'm very open to that. If you have anything you'd like to. Yeah? No, okay. Yeah.
In spite of knowing I am Atman, etc., I think for someone like me, but I have not been tested, the 2 biggest fears are fear of death and the fear of remaining alive but dependent on the world. I'm dependent, not like now, even now I'm dependent, but to be totally incapable, incapacitated, and not being able to do my things myself.
I think that's everyone's fears, Kunal. I really do. I remember Swami Swahananda saying, even our monks and nuns say, they do not want to be incapacitated and be a burden for other people. Everyone has that fear. They don't want to. That is our fierce independence. We all have this independence. In reality, we are already depending on and interdependent on everyone. But, yes, Swami Swahananda once said, I don't want to be hooked up to anything, no life support, Now, he had this written out. He had this posted everywhere. Don't call the paramedics. Give me 20 minutes to leave. Those were his instructions. Okay? So he had a stroke in his room. But guess who he put in charge of his medical? 2 doctors who could not follow that instruction. So, it's this thing that... So he was on life support for 3 days because they said, Swami, the thing is, you may just have a stroke and you could come back. And he said, oh no, I will have the big one then and go. Which he did. But we all fear being incapacitated. But think about one of the greatest minds we had in the world is Stephen Hawking. Totally and completely dependent. His mind was free. His body was trapped. And if we know we're not the body does its own thing. Sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does. We may have to have other people take care of us. We don't know. But that's the result of our karmas and some scars that we brought into this world. It may be, if our fear is too great, it may be something that we're on this earth right now to work out, to come to terms with that I am not the body. If the body goes, okay. We don't know what our fate is, but we have to accept and surrender to what. And we do have those fears, yes. And sometimes the strongest people develop conditions that suddenly they can't walk anymore. We had a doctor in town who started free clinics all over Santa Barbara. He had a huge skiing accident and became a quadriplegic. And this was not the way he had anticipated life. And instead of accepting this and continuing with his mental activity, which was fantastic, and his ideas, he made the choice to become resentful. And he was angry, he was unhappy, he resented everything and everybody because his body was incapacitated. But the only person that was unhappy there or disturbed or afraid was him. Everyone else accepted him in that condition, and it was fine. He was still his own person, and we could all talk to him and see him. But this is what our fears are often baseless, because we make decisions of how things should be, how we want them to be. And things don't necessarily work out like that. But it doesn't mean that it has to be bad, or that we have to be afraid of it.
So what happened to that doctor?
He died.
And he was resentful till the end?
Yes. He died angry. Yep. Didn't have a happy ending. He'll have to come back again and still work this thing out. Which I think is scarier than working it out in this life. I mean, how many times did any of you see that movie Groundhog Day? I think it's perfect Vedanta. Every day he gets up and has to do it over again until he changes his behavior. So, which is basically rebirth. That's it. We have to learn how to change our behavior. And I think people who have discovered Vedanta and religion are luckier than the ones who haven't yet discovered it. Because everyone here, everyone in most of the churches are working on themselves. They're not working on other people. They have discovered that, yes, I can be a kinder person. I can be a more compassionate person. And what tools do we use to do that? We use the tools every day. Which ones do we use consciously? Sit down and do your japa or sit down and meditate. Or simply acknowledge. If you have a shrine in your home, you go and say, good morning, if that's what you have time for. But it's still forming a habit and making that, getting closer to your real self. Because Michelangelo said that he did not create statues. He just took away the unnecessary material. He just took away the extraneous, which is what Vedantists do. We have piled all this marble on top of our life, and all we do is remove it. Remove the extraneous. So, and that's what we are working on. Now, it doesn't mean you have to sit there and do it every single minute of every single day, because we are human. And we have other parts of our life to cope with. But we can put that consciously approach life to further that taking away of the extraneous. We can decide, I don't want to be the person who reacts. One of my problems, I say used to be, it still is, is driving down the street and someone's either too close or they cut you off. And I remember when I first moved into the convent, I was driving and one of the senior nuns was driving with me, and I was going to hit the horn, and she said, don't bark at that car. So I think of that every time I get a little, and California freeways can be a lot of the time. So, but if we live consciously making those choices instead of letting our minds wander and tuning out, which we all do too. Most of us are not going into a space of great spiritual heights. Most of us, when we do that, tune out. It's into that void that does nothing. I remember someone once told Swami Prabhupada, oh, I can meditate so well. And he says, no, you can't. You're simply sitting there and blanking out. He said, that is not meditation. Meditation is conscious clearing of the mind. It's not unconscious. So, and I kind of went, whoa. He didn't mince words towards the end of his life. And, yes?
When it is so hard, even in the day-to-day,
Yeah.
to not fear how hard it is in such an event which
Oh, it's
happened.
so difficult. It is so
How
difficult.
can you be compassionate to the person who harmed up in the place of God?
Well, you take the example of, I was told the nurse and the doctor in the emergency who
They had-
saved him
they had
were
offered
Jews.
time. Yeah.
And they didn't see him as an enemy. They saw him as a suffering human being.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to look at even the most horrendous things and say, no, they are suffering so much more than we are. Their mental suffering, they are. Try and put yourself, not often, but just try and think, what would you have to, where would you have to get, how would you have to feel to even think of doing something like that? How unhappy would you have to be? How frustrated, how angry, how hopeless I mean, when I look at that, I think, oh, we are so blessed that we do not have to do that. And we don't have to feel that hopelessness, that frustration, that anger, that retaliating or fighting just unconsciously. Doesn't even know why they're doing it. They don't know why they're doing it. They don't know what they're really doing. And they don't really have a focus. I mean, they say they do, but when it comes... We had a student in Santa Barbara who did this years ago. And it was so senseless. And it was because... No, this one is really good. Girls didn't want to go out with him. And he went on a shooting rampage. Now, I mean, that is... Really? But how... You think about how literally unhappy and uncentered and hopelessness, thinking there is no way out. Then you have to have a certain amount of compassion because they're like little trapped animals that are just fighting for their lives.
So our fear is nothing compared to that.
Nothing compared to that. Yeah. At least that's what I see. I see that kind of thing. What does it take for someone to lose all hope? I mean, that's...
What does it take?
I don't know, because I haven't never been that type of person. Someone...
That's very complicated.
It is very complicated. I remember when someone said, "Do you get depressed?" And I said, no, I can take a nosedive, but it gets really boring because I'm there only thinking about myself, and it's really, really boring. I find the way to get out of those things is, well, like they say in all of the scriptures, when you get tamasic and depressed and angry, in those, take the nosedive. How do you get out of it? You enable rajas, and you go to work, and you start focusing on activity, work, being with other people. Then you can get up to peace and serenity and sattva. But it's all there in the scriptures. And they're all going to pass through our minds. Every one of them. Tamas, rajas, and sattva. But we have the opportunity to know that they are not permanent and they are simply passing through. As someone once said, we don't have to get on that bus.
Oh my God.
We can let the bus go by if we consciously choose to. It's like, the Atman is the observer standing on the corner. We pick the buses we get on.
Mataji, but you were talking about it is up to us to make the choices. But often fears stem from knowing if the choice we are making is right or wrong.
Yes, but
and you were talking about faith as well, that faith in the decision or the choice you make, but then once you make the choice, it takes up immense faith that you have to build up.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
To negate that fear that comes out of it.
Absolutely.
How do we build that?
With faith and dedication. I remember I had no desire to move into
You
it.
have to embrace the unknown. You need to.
You do.
You need to embrace it fully. It's not like you can shut your eyes and think that nothing will come at you.
No,
right?
no, it
That's
will
not the
come at
ostrich
us.
story.
Yeah.
Right? It is you are in that moment. People till the time in their normal lives they can live their life, talk about God or talk about anything. They're all happy and do good. At the times when I have seen people, I have seen friends, when something really unfortunate happened in their lives, or when people figure out that they have terminal illnesses, suddenly the real faith and the real strength and the real understanding of life comes in front of you, right? So it's not like you have to run away from that. Somewhere we have to embrace that unknown and reality that yes, this is the real truth, and we have to face it.
Yes, we do. But
You cannot run away from it in any which way.
No. Having faith is not running away from
Right.
anything.
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah, having faith is not that. Disasters will happen. We will have
Yes.
downsides. We will have things that happen in our lives. But how we choose to react to them. And if we make it a constant practice of having faith, knowing that things will be for our own good, when you keep practicing that every single day, then when the crisis comes, it kicks in.
No, what I meant was when my brother asked here about the wrong choice, right?
Yes.
I think somewhere we need to understand that even that second choice, whatever it is, maybe not right or wrong. Don't put a right or wrong
No.
symbol on that. It's that second choice also was part of that game.
Of
and
course.
you took one of those and you have to move on with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also maybe sometimes there will be mistakes, and then we have
Of course
to
there are mistakes.
correct that, and because we can't always expect that we will be always doing the right thing.
Mhm.
But
No.
that's too much burden.
No. We're human. We are going to make mistakes. But because we're on a path, we can learn from our mistakes and not make them over and over again. Like I said, doing the same thing over and over
Yes,
and expecting a different result is nuts.
Exactly.
But we can learn from our mistakes. We can change our behavior. We can look at it and say, okay, last time I honked at this car, and they got really mad, and then it became like a... I don't have to do that. I can choose to just let them go by, cut me off. It's not gonna. I'm gonna be like no later than I would have been if they hadn't. So I can change my attitude. Which
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Well, also what I have found is, it's just my own personal experiences. When there's fear, anger, and all those associated things, I mean, it used to be that life could have gone on just fine for at least some time with those. But once I have a child, it seems to me that the effects they compound so much
yes, they do. But
that it is, and I can see the effect right there.
yes,
I mean, if suppose I'm not feeling well, and I am not that patient with my husband is okay, whatever. He still doesn't like it, but he will go to the other room and just say, okay, this is temporary or whatever. But if I do that with my child, okay, she doesn't have that maturity. So she will not tolerate it as much, and maybe she will be flabbergasted. Also another thing is her life depends on my stability, right? So to a certain extent. So in any case, so I have felt that after having a child.
well, a child is a great teacher, and you have to become the adult and the parent. You must become the adult and the parent and act like that, because otherwise they will have too much uncertainty in their lives.
Yeah.
And the children need to be protected for quite a long time. They don't need to be protected till they're 35 and go home. You can cut them loose. But the other thing you have to remember, and that's in, I don't remember which Upanishad, you love the child not for the sake of the child, but for the God within. And that's the same reason you love the husband, you love the wife, you love any member of your family. You cannot possess them. You cannot possess them. You can love them for the Atman within. But you must allow them the freedom to be them.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to say this. So my husband is, for instance, mature and grown up enough to understand that the problem doesn't lie with him. The problem is that I'm not feeling well and it's temporary.
Yeah.
Whereas if I act out the same things on the child is not clear.
But see, that is, you just said, if I act out on the child.
it's up to mine.
That's you.
Yeah. Yeah, of
That's, you have to, that's the choice you have. You look at that and you say, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Like there was an ad on TV and it was lovely. It said, moms don't get days off. No matter if they're sick, no matter what happens, moms do not get days off. Because when you have a child, that is, raising that child is the focus until you've got them raised. And then you hope for the best. You hope that you did it right. And you hope that they can cope with the world that they're encountering. But you don't have control of that. The only thing you have control of is how you behave with your child. And you don't expect them to be the adult, because they're not. Give them time to grow up and become. I mean, it's just the way it has to be. I see so many parents, or I did 10 years ago, who wanted to be friends with their kids. They were raised by hippies. And so they decided that the best way to be a parent was to be friends with your kids. Well, their kids were so insecure, didn't know which end was up, had no boundaries, and were constantly looking for someone to set those boundaries to protect them. Now, you don't want to cage them, but you want to set a protection around them. And that's, you have to, in your day, every day, make that choice. How much of a boundary? I don't want to stifle their growth, but I want them to flourish. It's in the gospel over and over again. When the young tree, you put the fence around it so the cows can't eat it. As soon as it has strength, you can take the fence down. And this is what I see as also parents' duties. Protect the children until they're strong enough to make choices for themselves. And let them start gradually making these choices.
And
you don't just raise them and then say, okay, you're on your own. You have to continue, the teaching has to be gradual and,
And another thing I've seen about the fear and anger and all these associated things is, even your colleagues, your boss, they don't want to have your bad moods around all the time.
Well, they don't. No one does.
Yeah.
No one does.
So in the end, there's a huge chance of that, of if I continuously have that, of being completely isolated. Because everybody has their point, everybody's point is, everybody has enough problems in life. So there's no need to, if you're continuously upset and angry and about things that are not under control, then...
I'm sorry, but if you're continually angry and frustrated, then you have to look at yourself. Because it's not being caused by external events. And that's when, if you get the negative reaction often enough, hopefully it will make you make the choice to look at yourself and see, what am I doing that is causing these situations? I mean, every one of us will wake up sometimes in a bad mood. Every one of us will wake up happy for no reason, and I think the sky could fall in and we'd be, oh, okay, when we're in a happy mood. But wake up in a bad mood and someone says, well, did you see that? And you just get mad. But it's all internal. It has nothing to do with the externals. It's us going along with the gunas instead of recognizing the gunas and letting them go through. We identify immediately and hook our personality to that bad mood or that good mood. Or we wake up and we're full of energy and we're going to get everything done. Other days we wake up and I can't get out of bed, I don't want to do anything. But it's simply identification with the gunas. And we're stronger than that. We have meditation and contemplation are to strengthen your mind so that you have a certain amount of control over your own behavior. And if you can control your own behavior, then you don't run into the problems with other people if you become the person that you know you are. The kind person, the person who is compassionate, thinks of others before themselves. Doesn't mean you have to be yes, you stand up for yourself. You have to have the strength to know who you are before you can actually be compassionate or kind to other people. But knowing who you are is not an aggressive state. It's a state of surety and a state of, I'd say surety, a state of non-doubt. You don't anymore doubt what you don't. Through life you learn to do certain things and you don't have doubts about about your own decisions. It takes a while. You should have seen me when I decided to move into the convent. I went, what did I just do? That was a long time ago, but I think every one of us who choose this life, all of a sudden you're there and you go, oh dear, what did I do and how is this going to work out? Because there are big choices in life. It's like when you choose to get married, you choose to have children. I mean, these are all choices. And you have to step up. You have to step up and be there with a conscious living thing. You don't tune out and say, oh, well, it'll take care of itself. Maybe today I won't think about that. Yeah.
Isn't that a constant struggle somewhere between the level of detachment you need to have, and so I think it's like as much as detachment you can have and as less expectation as you can have. It's somewhere this balance you have to make, because what Dee says about this child, like I'm unmarried, I don't have a responsibility of a child, right? I don't care. But for her, that some little thing which is in her life is very important. But she has to also let go at certain level of, and she has to definitely make sure that she has that level of detachment. Because if she keeps, as you said, because it's very easy to have that attachment with a child and then just simply lose yourself in that thought, right? And then again you are in the same place, it's back to square one. So somewhere that balance is very important. But
well, yes, I mean, Swamiji said it perfectly. You have to be able to attach with all your mind and all your might and detach in a second.
Yeah.
And that is what you are working on. You have to attach to anything you're doing with everything you have. But you have to, if it is taken away, detach immediately and instantly.
I think I remember this. So he has given an example of a nurse. He said that Just because you said, I recall that. So he said that look at a nurse in a hospital taking care of newborn babies of somebody else's, right? She will give all the love, all the affection, all the attention. But the moment the parents come and about to take their baby, she's detached and she will start with the next baby.
Right. And that is something we all have to learn to do with practically everything in our life. Our possessions, our husbands, our children, our friends, our expectations, our everything we do. Because anything can change in 1 second. And we have no control over it necessarily. So, there was a book written by, what was his name? Living in the Now. He lives in our town.
Eckhart Tolle?
Eckhart Tolle. And he's a very, very unassuming gentleman. And we had some Vedantists who started reading the Be Here Now. Anyway, they started reading and they said, oh, it's just this wonderful book. So I read it through and I thought, well, it's nothing but basically Patanjali. But said in a different language that they could hear. So we all have these things. If whatever language you can hear it in, hear it, but we do have to attach and detach. And in overcoming our fears, that will help us overcome all of our fears. If we can learn the detachment to our bodies, to our jobs, to our world, to our homes, to everything. We don't ignore them, we don't neglect them, but not be attached to the physical aspects of them. Easier said than done.
I mean,
much easier.
Most important is will there ever be a relationship between a man and woman in that way?
Yes. Ramakrishna and Holy Mother.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's the extreme part of it. Personally. Yeah. No offense, but that is to me an extreme side.
It is an extreme, but I have known other couples who have done it, not at first, but they end up living as brother and sister for...
Why?
Yeah. We've had many devotees who have done that. And they care for each other, they're very attached to each other, but they're also very strong within themselves. And they do not their happiness does not depend on the other one.
Also,
take that microphone.
Oh. I mean, also, if the marriage has to last long with some peace in the dynamics, I think detachment is very essential. For instance, this is just one example that I have found. There were certain things which I felt that, those were some habits of my husband which I didn't like. And similarly, there were certain habits of mine which he didn't like. So, instead of going after it, I decided the first thing was just to let it go. But once I let it go, automatically I realized, not automatically, it still took a long time to understand that those habits were created when he was a child, and it served very good purpose for the thing that at that time was important.
But
So, first of all, I somehow realized I have no right.
no, you don't. You married this man because who he was.
Yeah.
You take him as a package. You don't try and change him into what you want him to be.
Yes.
You have to, anytime you enter a marriage, you have to accept them as they are. And that's it. We know a couple across the street who'd been married for 60 years. And she came over one day and she said, he just annoys me. And I said, what's he doing? And she said, he walks by. He's not doing anything. He walks by.
Oh, he walks by.
Yeah. And I said, because neither of them worked, he was an artist and he walked by her little office. And she says, he just walks by. And she said, I know it's unreasonable, but it really annoys me. And I said, well, what are you going to do? And she says, I'll go out and garden for a while and then I won't see him. But it's that kind of, our minds can attach to these annoying little things and magnify them. But we have to, as I say once again, consciously realize that it's our mind that is doing it. They're not doing anything to you or anything. They're walking by. And we all have to look at our lives and make those evaluations and see what we can do. We live in a group, and it used to be a very large group. It was really easy to get irritated with different people's behaviors. Monasteries and convents are not people who choose who they live with. You live with people who are like-minded and on the same path. But we looked at each other one day, there were 12 of us, and we went, we'd never even be friends out in the world. We would never have met each other. And here we are living together and making it work. Because if you're both trying for the same goal, if you have the same things in mind, and even if you don't, if you can accept that fact, because we have couples who, one is very interested in Vedanta, the other could care less. And that's the way it is. They love each other, they care for each other, but they give each other the freedom to be who they are. They don't try and stop the one who wants to be involved in Vedanta from going to the things, and the other one doesn't stop the person who is not interested in religion from pursuing what they want to do. And they have very happy marriages for a very long time. So it's possible. What I find when it becomes unhappy or abrasive is when people try to force the other member to be like them, to do the same things they do, which is also, in my estimation, what causes most of the problems in the world. We doubt ourselves. We doubt ourselves, and we get validation for our doubts by trying to make other people believe what we believe or be like us, because then we get the validation that what we're doing is right. That's something when I look at all of these religious wars particularly. I think people don't have the security in their own belief. There's a little doubt that says, well, I believe this, but if they don't, I may not have the right answer. So they go out and try and convince everyone else to believe as they do. And that's the beauty of Vedanta as far as I was concerned. We don't have to convince anyone to be anyone else. And they don't have to believe what we believe. Swamiji said it perfectly in his Parliament of Religion address. I don't come to make you into Hindus. I come to make the Muslim a better Muslim, a Christian a better Christian, a Buddhist a better Buddhist. And that's the beauty of it. We do not have to change anyone. But I think often the wars and the anger and the frustration comes from that fear or doubt that maybe I didn't make the right choice. Maybe they have something better, which isn't so. I mean, we have to learn to let go of that. Let go of the odious comparisons and become sure of ourselves.
Just one thing on that.
Hey, wait.
Yeah, he's got a microphone.
Yeah, I have one. That has more important stuff to explain. Okay, so my question. So on that, for normal dissimilarities in day-to-day life between two people staying under the same roof, it makes sense. But then there can be important situations or specific goals in life where you might be dissimilar. Those dissimilarities, is that so easy that then you can stay under the same roof? And because what I think is, and what I see, a couple of my friends got divorced and all that, right? So what I saw in their life issues, somewhere, as you said, both of them are the same, whether they made the right choice, they want to make the other person like them. But if, let's say, you have a specific goal, like I want to be spiritual and learn Vedanta, and somebody else is all about nightclub and normal life, right? You are two extremes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that easy, or should you even stay in the same roof as husband-wife in that case? Or you can try to change each other at a certain level. But is that the right path? Is after a certain distance, if you can try to be together, but if it doesn't work out, is it better to go apart, or is it better to keep dragging that kind of relationship, thinking that yes, it will fall into place at certain time in life?
I can't answer that for you.
Oh, that's fine.
I'm not a marriage counselor.
Yeah.
What I would say is you have to have a certain respect for each other so that you can discuss things.
Yeah.
You have to have a level of respect for each other as individuals and as your partner. And like I say, respect each other's goals. But also, before you get into the relationship, it would be good to talk to them.
Everybody thinks they have done it, but
No, I mean, really talk to them.
you
No, but I guess what she is saying that
Hey,
I guess the example of nightclub versus Vedanta is
no, that was I was
That was extreme.
too extreme.
yeah, again, right? Just,
Yeah.
But that happens. That
Yes,
happens.
of course it happens, but I think in that case they should have talked to each other a little longer before they got together.
Everybody thinks we will change after marriage,
No.
and that's the problem.
And the problem is that is half of the problem. The other half of the problem is that says that romance will take care of everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Romance will cure all the problems that we might have, and it doesn't. You have to even go into marriage with your eyes open and see if that person has similar, maybe not exactly the same goals, but similar behavior, similar, not accommodating, but compatible. Compatibility and friendship last a lot longer than romance. And
I think, as you're saying, that comes from being more fearless and true to yourself.
yes,
And that's where, because it's not a lie, but maybe you are not telling the other person exact truth also, and that stems from some kind of fear
Some
that
kind
he
of
or she may not like me if I
insecurity.
Yeah.
Not being secure. You have to find yourself before you can be there for someone else. Like Swami Prabhupada also always used to say, you can't teach anyone until you get some money in your own bank. You can't give to other people until you put something in the bank. And you kind of go, oh, okay. So I think maybe we've gone over time again,
Oh, okay. Sorry.
haven't we?
no.